Okay, guys, are y'all ready to get started? So, a few things that were not on the list: a pencil, probably have that at home, water, cup of water. You might want a few of those because they get kind of murky. Mine's already a little murky, just from playing around with stuff, and paper towels if you can find them. Let's see, but you should have your mop brush and your round brush, the little set of three. Your palette knife, your colors, your paint colors, and if you chose to go and get other colors that are going to look better, it's totally good. I love it. You need, these are two different things. So you have your metal leaf adhesive and sealer. So you're going to need both of those for metal leafing. Of course, your metal leaf and that package of plastic palette knives, which is for the metal leafing. These are disposable. Like, you don't want to have to clean up that glue. It doesn't come off. Okay, so let's get started. So first, we're going to use our pencil, and we are going to make an imaginary tic-tac-toe board on our canvas. What we're doing is we're dividing it into thirds. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but I like to kind of work in thirds. It kind of draws your eyes into the correct focal points, but we'll go over that later. But what you need to do, you can use a ruler if you want to measure, but I just eyeball it. So what I'm trying to do is divide it into 3 equal spaces. So I just kind of really eyeball it, and I'm thinking right about there and right about there. And these are going to be imaginary lines. They're not, we're not going to like draw with pencil all over the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give me a little scribble here and a little scribble right there where I thought the other was. And then I'm going to divide this part into 3 equal spaces. So 1, 2, 3. And I'm just eyeballing it too. And then I'm going to give myself a little pencil mark here, a little pencil mark there. And so we have to do that with this side as well. So those in there. I can eyeball it pretty quick. And then the bottom. So you need your 3 equal spaces. Okay, and so your tic-tac-toe board would be these lines connecting here and these lines connecting here. And so where these intersect is where I want you to put another little marker. So these are kind of, you're going to keep these in your head. They're going to get covered up, but they'll be good to have for definitely your base layers. So when we start blocking in the color. So I'm just going to kind of give myself kind of an imaginary spot of where these two would meet. I'm going to give myself a little scribble. And then the same with these. It's going to be right in there. This doesn't have to be perfect, nowhere near perfect. It's just kind of some guidelines to start thinking about. Okay, so next is gold leafing. We're going to start right away with that. So I'm using gold and silver. You're going to need your adhesive, and this is the palette knife that I like to use. It's disposable. You're going to want to throw it away after we're finished with this. They're so cheap, so that's a good thing. But you can't really clean that stuff off. It just, I don't know what kind of solvent you would need, but it's a pain. So one thing I do want to talk about with this is you don't want to get it on your hands at all. You just want to be really careful where the glue ends up. You just want to, we're going to just put it on here. I'll show you that in a minute. And we're going to really smooth it on with this, but just be careful for your fingertips. You never want to touch it because our next step is the gold leaf, and it's so airy and light. It sticks super well to this. Like, it's not going to go anywhere. So if you get it on your hands, you get it in your hair, then you can't even work with the gold leaf because you have to smooth it out. You have to use your hands, and if your hands have sticky on it, it's going to be lifting it up, making a mess. So if that makes sense, try to keep this only on here, and you'll have better luck. That's why I don't put it on a plate. I just like to keep it as in the least amount of places as possible, if that makes sense. But how I start is I don't even worry about this lid. I just take the whole lid off, and so it's open, and I'm gonna just put it directly on here, super, super carefully. I don't put it on a plate because then that's more places for it to end up and get sticky. So I'm gonna move the camera a little bit closer and show you this technique. I'm gonna move the camera back, and that way you can see exactly where to put it. If you wanna follow along perfectly with me, you don't have to, of course. So, but for you guys that really wanna just follow along exactly, I will move the camera back and you can put it exactly where I'm putting it if you want to. I'm gonna place the glue right on this, and I'll show you about how much I use. It's kind of like toothpaste. I just kind of put a line of it, just like that, on. I'm gonna try to work in this area so you can see. So you just smooth it on like that. Is it showing up? I think it is. Just a light. So you smooth it on, but this much is way too thick. You don't want it that thick. So you use the edge and you scrape off the excess. Does that make sense? So everywhere you put this, you're gonna want it to be this thin. You're not gonna want any spots that have kind of a lifted area, like a bubble or too much. Like everything needs to be that smooth. So now I have more on here, and so I'm gonna move down just a little bit and spread some more on here. And I just spread it on flat, but then I use the edge to lift it back up. And so on the edges, there might be globs where there's more. Just keep spreading it and lift up. So that there's not any spots that has a lifted edge or kind of a bead like that. On the canvas, you want everything super, super smooth and super, super thin. That's really important. You just open it up and you have a piece. You just get it out and see if your hands had any of the glue on them, you wouldn't be able to let go of it. So if your hands are clean, you're in good shape. Okay, so now we are just going to place this on. Let me move the camera. Yes. So we're just gonna place this over that area, and it will stick like in one place. And then you kind of work from the middle and just kind of push outward to where it covers all of the sticky part. So be careful if you are spreading and you spread off. There could be glue right there, and then it's on your fingers, and then you're in a mess. So just be careful. Keep your fingers on the gold leaf. Don't touch the canvas because you just might have some glue on the canvas. So you just press pretty lightly. You don't want to like scratch the gold leaf or anything. So you just press, and then you're gonna just kind of lift up. And you don't have to hang on to all the little pieces. Some people do, I don't know. I go through it pretty quick. But you just start taking the pieces off like that. So you just take off the excess. And so with each spot, you're gonna leave it like this. You don't need to worry that it's perfect. We'll get all of the gold leaf on the canvas, and then we'll come back with a brush and we'll dust off this excess. But for now, in order to keep your hands really clean, it's just best to just kind of get it in place all over the canvas and then work from there. Okay, so I'm giving you kind of the canvas from a better angle here. These are the 4 points of the tic-tac-toe, so kind of the intersection points that kind of divided it into thirds. So now I'm going to go through using the techniques that I showed you each time, where I'm going to put each piece of gold using those same techniques. Oh, my cat. Hey, what'd you see? Want to say hi? So I'm going to put it on a time lapse so that you don't have to sit and watch me do all of them. But I'm going to get it covered. Remember how I talked about kind of the circle and the golden mean and how your eye kind of enters on the left side of something and then it kind of circles around and then to a focal point. So I'm going to kind of be mindfully placing all of those in spots that kind of guides your eye around. So starting big on one side, your left side, I'm going to start with more, and then I'm going to get to where I do a little bit less, and then it kind of ends in a spot that's kind of your end of the golden mean ratio, kind of that focal point. It just kind of keeps your eye in and keeps your eye moving. Well, this is how mine turned out. I used gold and silver. It doesn't look like anything that great right now, I know. This is just kind of the stages of it. Just the main thing is making sure everything is smooth. I left the little four corners so you could kind of tell. If you want to screenshot it and do it exactly like this, you could screenshot it and know exactly where to put yours. There's going to be color that brings this flow around and makes it really pleasing to the eye. But that is where we are right now. Next step is to seal the gold leaf. So I'm going to use the sealer, the metal leaf sealer, and I'm going to do exactly like I did the other. I'm just going to take the entire lid off and open it up. It's taking me a second, sorry. And so I'm just going to use a paper towel. I have just a paper towel, and I'm just going to kind of blot a little bit on the paper towel to where it's just kind of wet. You can use a cotton ball, but I just put some on the paper towel, and I'm just going to blot on top of the gold leaf. You don't need to go real close to the edges with this this sealer. You just kind of stay right in the middle because the edges are going to be sealed with paint. So you really don't want to get it too far outside the edges. For one reason, it kind of mixes with your paint and makes a little bit of a different texture. So I just like to keep it right in the middle to seal the middle that will be exposed, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do another one up here. I'm going to take this off for now. This is just a little marker. But I'm just going to blot a little bit on my paper towel and just kind of blot right in the middle of these, just to seal them. Okay, and then you're going to want to let all of those dry really good before the next step. Okay, so we're going to start painting. I'm going to start with the French linen color. So this, if you're using different colors, this is one of your medium tones. It's not your darkest and it's not your lightest. So if you have a little bit different color palette, the two background colors that we're going to cover pretty much everything with are your medium tones. They'd be right in the middle of all of your colors, if that helps. But what we are going to do is do washes on the background. The bottom layer is very thin. I'm going to show you how to do a wash. You use a little bit of water and a little bit of paint, and you do almost like watercolor. I don't know if any of you have ever done watercolor, but it's very much like that. And we're going to be going around the gold leaf. You know, if you get on it, it's okay, it'll wipe off, but we're going to go around. But yeah, I'm going to show you the difference in a wash and kind of an opaque stroke so that you kind of know the difference before we get started. Now we're going to do a wash. So you're going to need a little bit of a paper towel and your largest brush of the set of 3. This isn't your mop brush or the big round brush. You're going to need your water and your medium color French linen, French linen paint. So what you're going to do is you are going to saturate your brush, but I want you to knock off most of the water just like that. And so you've got quite a bit. It's still kind of dripping. And then you take your paper towel and you just kind of blot off just a little bit more. So your brush is pretty wet. It's not, I don't know how wet, but about that wet. So what you do is you dip the end, just the end, in your paint. And what you're gonna do is when you're doing a wash, you can hold your brush like a pencil because you're gonna kind of scrub. So you're just putting paint on, but you're almost scrubbing the excess back off. So that is a wash, and you can soften the edges by lifting up, pushing down and lifting up, and that'll blow out the edges and kind of soften the edges. But that's a wash, and so you know it's a wash if you've got water and you can kind of lift the paint back up. You can see the canvas behind it, but we want this layer to be really breathable, if that makes sense. A thick layer, you know, would be like a lot of paint, like that, but we're definitely just going for the wash. So even if you put quite a bit of paint in a spot, you can come back with and dip like in your water. You can get it wet again. And you can kind of scrub over that area and turn it into a wash and then spread it around and down. So let's do our French linen wash. So I'm going to wet my brush, tap it out a little bit, and get some paint just loaded up right there on the end. And I am going to start right up here in this top half, and I'm going to put a wash over pretty much this whole area. So I'm just going to scrub that in pretty quick. I'm going to go around all of the gold leaf and the silver leaf. You can go right up to the edge of it, really. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as it's not opaque, like you're not covering everything with paint. It's something that you can still see the canvas breathing. You kind of scrub it, and then you definitely know that you're making it kind of a wash. I like to leave brush strokes, some texture on these bottom layers. It adds interest. Sometimes you just kind of, you'll end up finding some interest that you didn't even kind of plan for, just in the way that you scrub it on at this stage. So if it starts getting too dry where it feels like it's covering too much, you can add a little bit more water to your brush. And just scrub it around. Kind of do your brush all different directions if you want. You can make it super smooth if that's what you think you want to do. Or you can leave interesting strokes. Okay, I'm going to come right through the middle. I'm going around the silver that I have right here. And it doesn't look good right now. I promise it's not going to look good for a while. Some of my paint is going on a little bit thicker in some places, and I like that, but you can smooth it out if you want. Leave it all really smooth, or you can kind of give it a little bit different interest. But I'm going right up next to the gold, right up next to my silver. Just make sure that I have a good watery bit of paint in that area. I'm leaving some strokes here and there. also going to do this corner. Just scrub it in there. Going right up next to that gold. Right up next to this gold. Okay, you'll want to go on the edges. You'll want to take it down and make sure you get your edges with this color. While you're here, I'm just gonna barely put it on my edges because I can go back pretty easily and know which colors to put where on the edges, but I think it would be a good idea for you to go ahead and wrap your edges with the paint colors that we're using right now, the edges up top and on the sides. I need a little more water. So I'm getting this edge over here, getting really just barely over the gold leaf. Right here, and then over here I'm going barely over the gold leaf. Coming down right there till I hit the gold leaf here. And right through the middle. You're not going to see a lot of this layer, especially in pictures or from where you are on my painting, but in real life, all these different layers really give it depth and dimension and a lot of interest, especially like how we're working right now on video. You're not going to see a lot of the depth in my painting, but you're going to see it in yours. We're going to have different tones of all these colors in different places, and what you want to be mindful of is you don't want to blend them all together. We want to just really, we'll have kind of times where I say, okay, let's mix this paint with like maybe 50% of your lightest color, and we'll have some different strokes that are totally different tones of the same colors, if that makes sense. But that's what gives it a lot of depth and dimension. Let's see, where else do I need to go? Okay, I do want to go down. So here is my intersection. So here are my 4 points. I am going to come down and kind of plug in this square. I'm going around the gold leaf, cutting right in here in between all these, overlapping over the gold just a little bit. I need a little bit more water for this area. I'm just pulling the paint down and then kind of lifting up right here. I'm going to just let it kind of trail off in this area. Let me get the camera a little bit closer. So on this side, I'm just kind of trailing off a little bit, and it kind of goes up. So we're still working on that French linen color. Still working with the French linen. I am going to tie these together just a little bit with some strokes, water and my paint color. These are still just washes, but I'm going to kind of connect these a little bit. And I'm not going down really in this last square. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So square 7, I'm kind of staying out of with this color. I'm going in between, kind of on top of these golds and silvers, but just kind of around them. And then I'm just kind of feathering towards the middle not a whole lot going on in the middle with this color. Okay, I'm going to touch this up a little bit right in between here. And this looks really rough, really messy. I'm going to pull this down on top of these little metal leaf spots. And here is my intersection of this top half. I'm going to go ahead and cover that whole third quadrant there. And then just pulling the edges down to where they kind of blend, kind of fade out. But like I say, you can keep things super smooth. You can be real perfectionistic with it. It's going to look amazing. It's going to be kind of your style, and it'll be great. Okay, so I've got those 1, 2, 3. Those 3 boxes are covered with this color. This box is pretty much covered with the color. It just kind of barely trails off once it crosses over that line right there. And then our middle quadrant doesn't have much of anything. It has trails of paint, you know, kind of coming up, but you don't want to see a definite box. That's why it's kind of got trails. We've got a little bit of paint on our middle lower quadrant. That's because I use that as an example. And I'm just going to kind of trail this off kind of in an angle that way. And I'm not going to put any in this quadrant over here yet. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so here is that bottom box. This right side of that bottom box, I'm going to go ahead and trail all the way down and then paint a little bit under there so that you have a little bit of that color right under there. You might want to look at it and see what it's looking like down there, but I'm not looking at it. So I have kind of an angle that goes across this box and this box, and they kind of connect it. So right through here, it just kind of trails. Even up in this box here, I've got a little space that doesn't have any paint right there. So just kind of a trail that way, and everything up here is kind of covered. So we've kind of got our movement going right about like this, okay? So now I'm just gonna do one more little spot of this color in this box. So it's gonna be the top right corner, and I'm gonna pull it down kind of at an angle to where it kind of hits, kind of goes in a motion that way. Okay, and I'm gonna call it good. So I know this doesn't look good yet, but this is where it starts. So wash out your brush really good. We are gonna do a second wash with the Restore color. So this is kind of your brownish color. In the picture it doesn't look very gray, but this is kind of a gray, and this is gonna add a warmer color. So this painting has a lot of warms and cools. I love the contrast of warms and cools. So we're gonna start with this one, and we're gonna do another wash. This wash is going to fill in all of these empty places, and I'm gonna kind of show you how to do this down here, how to tie it. So we kind of faded off as we went this way, and we're gonna kind of come upward and fade upward with this color, if that makes sense. This center is not gonna have a whole lot of this warmth. We're gonna kind of leave that center open for now. So make sure your brush is all clean without any gray on it. Just gonna kind of wipe it and make sure, yeah, it doesn't have any gray. So now I'm gonna re-wet it so that we're doing washes. and then I'm going to use that Restore color. So this color goes on a little thicker than this gray, so kind of be careful, but you know, keep it a wash for now. So what we are going to do, let's start in this corner. Let me make sure you can see it. Okay, we are going to start in that corner. Let me move this out of the way just a little bit. I thought about having you turn it over, which actually I think that is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to have you turn the painting over for this step. So turn it upside down. I am going to set it on the floor to work. See if you can see this area. No, I think I'm going to set it back up. Yeah, okay. I think that will help make this this area where we're going to blend, it'll make it just a little bit easier, I think. So I'm going to start, now I turned it upside down, and I'm going to start in this square, and I'm going to bring that brown color down, and I just want to barely let it mix in with that gray. So I've got water and the Restore color, the brown, and I'm just going to start right up here and do this wash. You're going to want to do your edges. This is really watery because I wanted to do it pretty thin with this color, so you can see it kind of dripping, but I can go back and catch them like that. I just want this color to be really, really thin. So try to use that, what's on your brush, and kind of work your way down. Give it a lot more water here. It got a little bit thick. Now I'm going to use my towel and I'm going to blot it off. Since it was dripping so much, I got a lot of water on there, so I'm going to kind of blot that off. And I'm going to come back and just kind of try to move what's already on the canvas. Kind of bring it down. And I haven't quite tapped into this area just yet. There's still a gap, but just kind of keep adding a little bit of water and a little bit of paint, kind of come towards it. So I'm leaving it darker, kind of right there, and then I'm just barely closing that gap, almost with water now, but just kind of blending the two colors. So it kind of closes that gap. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now I'm going to come over to this side and do the same thing. Start kind of heavy and just start pulling it downward. You're going to want to paint on that side a little bit. Start pulling it down. I need more water now. I'm not adding any more paint this time, I'm just adding more water, and I'm going to start bringing that down. bit more paint, quite a bit more water. Just bring it right up to the edge of that gold. And then this area, I'm just letting it kind of fade right into that gray. And these colors, they look really close. The gray and the warm, they look really close, but they're not quite the same. Okay. So I really like that. These are just layers. I'm gonna turn it back over now and show you what we've got going on with the composition. Okay. So this is what it's looking like so far. We've got mainly gray. So gray kind of does this, and then our warmer color is just right here on the edges, this edge and this edge. So warm colors, and then your gray. Okay, so here is where we are. We just have two colors done in washes. Everything kind of goes right up to the edges of the gold. So now that you see it close up, you see how watery it looks. You can see the canvas behind it. It's pretty messy. It kind of goes right over the edges of your gold leaf. I know it doesn't look good right now, but trust me, we're coming along. But just want you to know that, you know, yours looks great. If this is where you are, it's where you should be. Nothing pretty about it just yet, but it will. It's gonna get there. Okay, so now we are going to do a wash with the Relic color. So this is a really dark color. This is your darkest color, but we are going to do it in a wash. So it's going to be really translucent and actually kind of light, but it's going to start adding the depth. So clean brush. And oh, so pretty. Okay, so your brush is a little bit wet. You're going to need your paper towel. So your brush is a little wet like we practiced before. So it's actually kind of dripping a little bit. Blot it off a little bit. So you've got about equal parts paint and water. So here, so this is where I want you to kind of pay attention to your intersections. With this color, I want you to barely stay over the intersection, your bottom two intersections. So we are going to kind of just stay right here in this area and a little bit in this area, and then we're going to do a little bit right here. So as you can see, we're still working our way around, but let's see. If you hold your paintbrush, this is a darker color, so it's kind of scary. Kind of hold your paintbrush right in here, and I'm just kind of placing a little bit in these places. Here's my little intersection spot. I'm just going to barely come down, and I'm just barely hugging kind of that area right under the gold and the silver there. And you can kind of go on top of it and then just kind of really lightly lift as you drag it down. And so it's got enough water in it that it's going to allow you to kind of keep working with this. So see how I kind of had a heavy spot there? It's going to allow me to keep on dragging it. Okay. And staying above that, I'm just going to bring it down a little bit more. And now I'm going to wipe my brush off and add water, and then whenever I tap it off, it's kind of got a little bit of color in it, and that's okay, but it's mainly, for the most part, clear. So I'm going to get just a tiny bit more water, and I'm going to just kind of come in and scrub right there on that line. And just keep kind of pulling it down, and you're just softening the edges just a little bit, and you can kind of lightly push and pull like that. And we're just kind of bringing it down a little bit more, but we're not using any paint to bring it down. We're using what's already on there to bring it down right here. Okay, so we've got just a little line there. We're going to do a little line over here. So I loaded my brush back up with water and paint. And I'm going to come right up under here. I'm going to go over on this side a little bit. And I'm not too worried about those edges just yet. Come right up here. And then I'm going to work my way right towards this. Just going to kind of wrap around that little piece of gold. Okay. Now I'm going to take all the paint off. Use a little water to get off. I probably need another towel so I can show you kind of how clean I'm letting it get. So here is clean. It may have a tiny bit of paint in it, but really not much. So I'm going to get some water and I'm going to start kind of working right underneath that and kind of pulling what's already there down. But I'm not ever going to touch all the way back up, and I'm just barely touching the edges and pulling down. And then I lift up as I get down here. So you kind of push and lift away. I'm going to work to soften that up just a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to work over here on this spot. So I'm going to load it back up with a little bit of paint and a little bit of water. I'm going to work right here. And I'm going to go ahead and go on top of that a little bit. You might want to do the same. Okay, and I realize this is really dark right here. This is kind of one of those areas that's going to be just kind of pull your eye in and wrap you around. I'm going right up over that. And I'm going to keep pulling it down. Okay, now it's time to kind of take whatever paint is on off. I'm going to wet it, kind of clean it up a little bit, and then get a brush back in the water. Pretty damp brush, not quite dripping. Now we're going to work our way back up in there. And if it's too wet and it starts dripping, you can just kind of swipe up. But now we're just going to pull some of that color down a little further with this water. And then lift up to where it doesn't leave too much of a brush stroke. It kind of fades into nothing. And I'm going to work my way up here with this watery, kind of soften this edge. Okay. I'm going to do a little spot right in there. Kind of doing the same thing, we're just kind of repeating it. I'm going right over the edges of that gold leaf. And I'm going to even go over the edge of this one since it's here. Okay, I'm going to wipe off, get a little more water. Very damp brush. And I'm just going to start pulling at that and blending. See how it's starting to drip? under it and just kind of pull it down. So I like that. So I've got little beads of paint that kind of dried like that. They're probably not quite dry yet, but you can kind of take a damp rag and you can kind of soften them up a little bit if you want to at this point. If you want to leave them, they're interesting, pretty, but if you want to take them off, you can. There's a lot of little places you can use that technique to just soften edges if you want. I like some interesting edges, but that is a good way to kind of soften and blend. Just remember not to go all the way into the dark area because you will lift it off, and so that kind of would defeat the purpose, I guess. So, okay, we are ready for the next step. Okay, so now we're going to use the castle color. It's a really pretty one. I like this color. And we are just doing washes again. So my brush is clean. It was damp. And then I just kind of got a little bit. You can put it on a plate if you want. I'm just used to doing it like this. Now we are going to use that color. And we are going to kind of fill in just a little bit of this area right here. Taking off all the paint, dipping it in water. So I have kind of a wet brush. I'm just going to kind of soften this up a little bit. And that just kind of ties right into there. Do that again. But underneath this color right here. So I've got a little bit on my brush, and I'm just kind of right where that faded into that next color, I'm putting kind of a layer of that. And then I'm going to do the same thing we've been doing and kind of drag it down with a watery brush. A little bit too. Soften that up a little bit. So here's where we are at this stage. Still doesn't look great. These are just the under layers. So if yours looks anything like this, you're on the right track. Okay, one more step before we lose our daylight. And you get to use the big fun brush. And then once we do this step, it's gonna need a little bit of time to dry, maybe 30 minutes or so before you do the next layers. But I will be stopping this evening. I don't know if that will go all the way down in there. No, you're gonna have to put a little bit of this on a plate. This is the French linen. We're going back to that color. You want to dump a little bit on a plate. I'm going to do that now. So it's not going to take a whole lot. Probably about this much on your palette or your plate. Paper plates work, whatever. And you're just going to put the end, dip the end in it. So we have quite a bit of coverage. So it's about like that. I don't know if you can see that. And what we're going to do is we're going to do big strokes. These aren't going to be washes. These are full coverage of paint. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to fill in just a few of these empty spots. So we've got kind of an empty spot right through here, and I'm just going to push it down and lift it up, push it down and lift it up. Okay, just did 3 there. I'm going to have to get more paint. I'm going to do some in this area. So I'm just going to push it down and lift it up, push it down and lift it up. Get more paint. Dip the end in it, just the end. So you push it down. And you're just kind of making back and forth strokes. I'm going to come in on that edge a little bit. And just filling in, not completely filling in, but just kind of going in that space that doesn't have color right there. Another dip. I'm going to fill right in between here. I'm just putting a few dark layers. Okay, so now I'm going to come right in here. I hope you can see this. Right down here. Make a light. Through there. Right up against that area. That just goes right up into that gold. I'm going to come right in on that gold right there and just pull upward. Gonna have to get a little more paint. It's better not to get too much right away. I don't want to waste it. And this should do it. I'm going to connect this little spot here. I've got quite a big dip right there, and I've got a dip coming underneath here. Kind of get this edge over here, and then over here you want to get this edge. I don't know if I'm back far enough, but I'll zoom out and show you there. Now, so right here where this dark is, make sure you can see that part. Okay. So right here above the dark, I'm just going to pull from the dark upward. So barely goes over that dark. That's it. And then right into that silver area. So just right on top of that. And then I'm going to connect these two right here. And you can pause between everything just to kind of catch up. And so right now we're going to connect these two areas with just like one spot right there in the middle. And then I'm just going to lightly connect like that. So we've got kind of a flow going right here, kind of a flow coming back in. Got some nice darks up here, lights down here. I'm going to fill this in a little bit right through here. Go ahead and get some color on these areas that don't have color. You can just kind of tap it in. I'm going to go ahead and go right in here between all of this. And this big brush kind of allows the shapes to kind of start forming more of a brush stroke shape instead of kind of the weird shapes that we have. Oh gosh, you're probably not even seeing it over here. Let me check. Okay. So right here, I'm just kind of filling in some of these empty spots with quite a big blobs of paint. So I kind of just let it run on top of the dark, kind of right in between these colors. So I've got a lot of this linen color right through there, a lot through here, and a lot down here. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the rest of what I've got. Find a good spot for it. I think actually right up here would be a really good spot. So I'm going to get right up against that gold, kind of go ahead and get some color on it. See how it kind of cuts in? And then I'm going to go on top of that silver, just barely on the edges, kind of wrap around it. And so your gold leaf and your silver, your metal, it's going to start shrinking, looking smaller, and that is okay. That is part of the technique. Fill in a little bit of that. Okay, so we've got a whole lot of this gray color. I love this color. This is my favorite color in this painting. And once we do the creams and the white colors, not completely white, but some of the cream colors, it is just going to really pop. And so you're kind of starting to see where those light colors are going to be. They're going to be right in here, right up here, right down here, right through here a little bit. Yeah, but this is a good place to stop and let it really dry a little bit and back away from it. Don't overwork this stage at all. This stage has to be pretty thick, and there needs to be some contrast. You don't want to cover the work that we've already done. What else? Yeah, this is a really good stage to stop and just kind of let it be for a little. Brushes dry really fast, so you do want to wash them out right away. I've been leaving this one that we've been using just soaking, and that's fine. But this one, after this stage, you probably want to just go ahead and get it washed out really good and then leave it this way to dry, not this way because it'll fill up with water. I think that's it. So I think we're at a good stopping point. Okay, so here is where we are at this point. I really like the neutrals. Colors, we've got a lot of the gray up in this corner. Zoom in, let you see how it kind of overlaps. You can see little brush strokes where it just kind of real lightly feathers over the gold leaf. So you're really cutting into the gold leaf. It's starting to get smaller, but that was our intentions. You have to come up over it to kind of seal the edges and to make it look correct. Like this area isn't done because it still has a little bit of this area exposed, but here are some edges that are done. That's what they'll start to look like. We've just got some grays, some blacks, some golds. We've got more of our warmer brown. Nothing is really blended yet. We've got some really interesting brush strokes. There's no like solid edges, like solid lines that kind of dip down. We keep it rough right here. Just the best thing is to do is just kind of walk away from it and let it be for a little bit, because we can tend to overwork things. Like if we were to kind of smooth this out and connect things, it's going to really take away a lot of interest and depth that you're going to find that you really love about it later.